So are you still watching? Then we are gonna go to the next museum aan de Stroom, as I said, between the Bonaparte dock for Napoleon Bonaparte and the Willem dock for William the First. I think it was William the First, the ruler of the Netherlands, who was ruling over this very province, city, country of Belgium. And I'm gonna eat a baguette with a chai latte at the museum restaurant because my food was just a small portion and was like, yeah, you would say a dog portion, right? I mean,
it also looked like dog food.
Yeah, very small. It was something like this. Like that. Okay, never mind. Yeah, so we are going in there. We're gonna show you what they have. I guess it's about the history of the harbor of Antwerp. Then see you there. So we are here at the museum cafe. Before we enter the museum, I'm taking a sandwich with a small salad and chai latte. We can share it, of course, because you like salads and chai latte, and I prefer this. So we have arrived at the MAS, the museum aan de Stroom. Ta-da! So, among other things, you have expositions about how it was to feed the whole city of Antwerp in the past. You can see they had these carts full of potatoes and bread that were brought on trains, and then they could supply the city with it. Cows that were transported via ferries. Yeah, and that's the model of a cart from the past. This is how Antwerp looked like in the past. You can see outside of the city walls it was just pastures, land that could be used for agriculture, and inside of the city walls you have the city with the Gothic Cathedral of Our Dear Lady showing itself proudly over the skies. Antwerp was not always this rich. The thing is that when it became part of the Netherlands around the 16th century, it was very normal. It was a normal city, let's say. It was neither poor nor rich. The reason why is because the Dutch had closed off access to the Scheldt River, so they couldn't do any trade with ships, or it was quite restricted. And with Napoleon and the French Empire conquering Antwerp and Belgium, they opened up the Scheldt River again to trade. So you could say that Napoleon, he was a bad person, a bad emperor, also very arrogant, but with his decisions he helped Antwerp become a very cosmopolitan and rich city. Also, since Antwerp is connected through railroads to the Walloon farmland, it could also trade with the rest of the world, things like cattle, grain, and so on. So it was really a crossroads of worlds here in Antwerp with its harbor. So I think we are done with the museum part because there are so many rooms, but not all of them are interesting. For example, this one, why does Buddha need our heads? It's so vague, it doesn't sound interesting, and we came here for things related to Antwerp. So we are just gonna go straight to the panorama, which is going upstairs. I think you can access the panorama for free, you don't need to buy a ticket. So technically you could come here for free.
Yeah.
So the panorama. I can't believe that we entered for free with the museum pass. Pass Musée of Belgium. We really like Belgian cities, don't we?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And this panoramic viewing deck is free for everyone.
Yeah. Wow. That's what I call a business idea. You look for a problem or something that someone needs. Hungry after climbing the MIS, so this museum, Ellie's Gourmet Burger. And you can go there to get a burger in case you are hungry after climbing this area. So now we are going to the Red Star Line Museum about migration. Apparently it's not about migration to Antwerp, but from Europe to America and other continents. Since the 17th century, or yeah, something like that, or 18th maybe. But yeah, we'll learn more about it at the Red Star Line Museum. And this is a bridge that we are crossing that separates the Willem dock from the Bonaparte dock. And this area, this neighborhood is pretty rich, hipster. It was completely remodeled, renovated, basically restructured to house all of the hip people that want nice houses, modern apartments, artistic places to live. So it makes this area very cosmopolitan, very modern, with a very lively street culture. We live in something like this, but much less fancy. Yeah. So here we are, Red Star Line. The museum starts with a kind of exposition about the beginnings of migration in prehistoric times until we reach the modern times, and it kind of leads you through the centuries of migration and the reasons why people migrated.
People are often angry at rich people or capitalists because they supposedly steal all the money or take everything for themselves. But we shouldn't forget that because of many of those people who take the courage to start companies, we also get to buy things or enjoy services. Like this man decided to start the company that would ship people to the US, and that's why so many people were able to start a new life in the US. Something I learned at this museum is that in the past it was also quite hard to migrate. There was a lot of bureaucracy and you had to do a health check at the doctor.
Several checks.
Right, several checks. You needed many papers. So I used to think that it was very easy in the past that you would just go onto a ship and go to another continent, but actually it was also hard in the past.
Yeah.
De agent antwoordt ontsteld op zijn vragen. Wij zijn arme mensen. Wij werken tot 11 uur 's avonds om een beetje geld te verdienen voor moeder. Ze heeft het dringend nodig.
Veel Vlaamse landarbeiders en ambachten.
So they take East Galicia as an example, which is in the old territory of Austria-Hungary. Now it would be Ukraine. They would go from a place like Brody to Lemberg. They had to cross many borders. You can see this is Austria-Hungary. It was a massive piece of land. This was Romania. And then they had to cross the border here to go to Antwerp, and it was many stops, many border crossings, medical checks, baggage disinfection, passports. Sometimes they had to get a passport for Prussia, and they could only get it if they promised to work 6 months during the summer at a field. And then finally they reached Antwerp. From there they could go to America. It would take normally 2 weeks to get there or even more, and the whole process from leaving their village to getting to America legally could take up to 2 years or even more. By far, one of the most important prominent migrants in history is Albert Einstein. The German physicist emigrated in 1930 to America. These are manuscripts that he wrote. For example, here he's thanking the Prussian Academy of Science for its support so far in the last 19 years, and that he could dedicate himself to science independently without needing to depend on investors, but that due to the current situation with the persecution of Jews in Germany, he cannot afford to stay a member and has to emigrate to New York, where he is received with open arms by the mayor and the press, also even the German consulate. Of course, it was also both sides with the Red Star Line. So the ship went to the US or to America to bring people who wanted to live in America, and it came back with tourists from America who wanted to check out how Belgium and Europe is like, and they wanted to have their vacation, but most of them didn't come with plans to stay in the chaotic and war conflict-ridden Europe. They had to shower just like when you go to the swimming pool. You need to shower before entering the swimming pool. They had to shower and disinfect their bags and baggage and even clothing before they could enter the ship. It was to prevent diseases. We are discovering how many relatives we have that emigrated to America. For example, my wife has a relative called Herman Moning.
And he is Dutch.
He's Dutch. Yeah.
He arrived in the US in 1925.
Yeah. I do know that I have relatives on the side of my grandpa who emigrated to Florida, to Tampa, I believe, and they stayed there and are living there, but they are not very close relatives. And yeah, my other grandpa lived in Uruguay for very long, and technically you can also find him here, but I don't know his name. So that was the Red Star Line Museum. It was one of the most interesting museums that we've ever visited. We can really recommend it. As you can see, they have also a rooftop here from which you can see the city of Antwerp, and they also show images of the past, how this used to look like. Now it all stopped. It was rebranded and rebuilt into something more modern. Yeah, here you have the distance to places like Montreal, Chicago, New York. So that's the distance that people used to do by train, by boat, and yeah, now we need to go downstairs, and we were gonna visit one more museum, but we don't have the time. It's already almost 5 o'clock. I think we're gonna stay here in Antwerp for a couple more hours and then we'll take the train. The only problem though is that the battery is almost dead. Only 9% left, so we'll need to figure out what to do with it.